Hello, everyone. Good Friday. Welcome to Property Zone Live on MyQI. My name is Sean Lee. It has been a while since I talked. And as you know, a week ago, our Bank Negara has announced the second quarter GDP of Malaysia. And it may took some of people by surprise and it become the headlines on a lot of Saturday newspaper. So I'm just going to share the screen of my slide for today. They will include some of the headline that you can see. Okay. Oh, I hope everybody can see. I think first of all, there are three reasons behind why the GDP result for the second quarter of 2020 in Malaysia took the market by surprise and create a bit of shock. The first is actually the negative or contraction of 17.1% is below what the market median survey. The median, they're expecting the Malaysian GDP to be contracted by about 10.9% in the second quarter, but it came out worse than that, lower than the 17.1. That's the first thing. Second thing, 17.1, also the worst quarter GDP result in Malaysian history. Okay, so the second reason. The third reason why the GDP result shocked the market and took everyone by surprise is also Malaysian GDP contraction of 17.1 basically is the worst in Asian countries so far. So this so-called negative news at least many by surprise. But does it mean that Malaysia is going to be worse in terms of economy-wise, in terms of property market-wise? Where are we heading in the second quarter of 2020, which is we are now? So I think it is worthwhile the time to let us to explore further and take a step back to understand basically what is really GDP and what does it mean to us as everybody on the street. All right, let me move on the second thing. In economic way, to gauge how the country's economy is doing, basically they use either GNP or GDP. So most countries are using GDP, and the whole that means that if you look at the simple instruction or illustration of what is GDP, basically GDP is a way for us to measure a production inside of a country, no matter who makes it. For example, as long as a product and service is rendered and is produced within Malaysia, even the two transaction party could be foreigner. It could be a Korean selling one thing to Indian, all right, or Japanese inside Malaysia. The service, the product render is considered part of the GDP. So as long as within territory of Malaysia, all these service render a product manufactured, everything is considered part of the GDP number. GNP is different. GNP, they are looking at the nationality. All right. So without confusing everyone further, so let us just focus on GDP. So to put it in a layman term, I would normally, that's how I actually interpret GDP to make it easier to understand. GDP basically, you can look at a household, at a household, we always look at the household income. The household income will determine that, how good in terms of financially we are. GDP basically is how well off or how worse off we are in terms of the economy activities of a country. Now, GDP result normally come in yearly GDP. They also further break down into quarter GDP. So quarter is January, February, March, there's considered first quarter, and so on and so forth. Just like when you're back to school, you always have the first half result, and then you have the second half year result, and then we have the total yearly result. So basically, this is how we want to know how a country's economy is performing by quarterly or by yearly. Okay? Actually, when I talk about GDP, the absolute amount by itself, how many ringgit or how much the value in terms of ringgit or in terms of USD or whatever, is not so significant. The absolute number by itself. What we are looking more normally is the percentage. Percentage in changes compares to last quarter. percentage in changes compares to last year. So in this case, we know where we stand today better. All right. So absolute number of the GDP is not as significant as the percentage of change, whether it's quarter or yearly basis. Okay. Now, if I can show you, this is basically the report come out by Bank Negara, our country, Bank Negara Malaysia, and at the same time, uh, if you look at these two figures here, some people may be confused of why suddenly there are two figures. One is negative 16.5, the other one is negative 17.1. Now, if you look at the pink color, we will actually go back to pink color, say GDP growth Q on Q means quarter on quarter. So the negative 16.5, which is in the pink color, represent that the economic of Malaysia in the second quarter has contracted 16.5% as compared to the first quarter of 2020. So this figure is based on how we are doing in the second quarter as compared to first quarter of 2020. All right. Now the negative 17.1 basically indicated Malaysian economy has contracted 17.1% as compared to the same quarter last year. That means that compared to April, May, June, these 3 months, our Malaysian economy in April, May, June 2020 has contracted negative 17.1. So this is the one of the reason that it become a headline for almost all newspaper on last Saturday, if you can remember. But other than this, I think this is the end result. But also we want to look at how inflation, because inflation is another very big indicators for people who want to understand Malaysian economy, want to understand Malaysian market better. Now, what we are looking at here is that the inflation, or headline inflation, we include everything, has come down to negative 2.6%. So instead of having an inflation, Malaysia is having a deflation during the second quarter of 2020. The main reason that contributed to the deflation, of course, as you know, is basically MCO period, our economy basically come to a halt, and also the reduced fuel prices. Those of you are still remember during this MCO period, we can see the world market, the fuel prices, the crude oil prices has come down so much. Even there's one time our WTI, the future, has come down to negative $36, right? I think everyone remember that one. So lower fuel prices in general has bring down the inflation. I will actually come back to what does the inflation has to do with economy and also in particular to property. Okay, so there's two things take note. First, basically, is the GDP number come down, and also instead of inflation, we are basically having a deflation, a negative inflation. They call deflation. Things become cheaper in terms of what the currency exchange you. So negative 2.6%. Okay, so let me just come down to the third. These are the 3 points I think is very important. Because the BNN report is very long, okay? To be frank, I didn't finish every single page of it, but I extract out these 2 pages. These are the first pages and some of the points that I think is rather relevant and is worthwhile to share. GDP, inflation, or in this case, it's deflation. And the third one, basically, you want to know, as you can see, the breakdown of AMJ. AMJ stands for April, May, and June. So even though we see a sharp drop in economic activities, almost in all sectors. So we break down the sector, we have wholesale and retail. Basically, this is the personal consumption, industrial production, export, credit card spending, PMI, okay, production manufacturing index, and electricity generation. All these sectors, regardless where they are, they have suffered a sharp drop, especially in the month starting at the end of March, and at the month of April, you have a sharp drop. But if you pay a closer look in the graph, this during the May and June period, which is just a few months ago, All this sector, basically the activities climb back to not 100%, but you look at where it is it has come back to almost 100%. So we have 90.6, 97, 98, 79, and manufacturing PMI actually above 100%. That means it's come back to even before the lockdown period, prior to lockdown period. Okay, so I think one thing is very important is that whether we are in a business or we are doing an investment, for example, in property, all right, all this data in GDP tell us how the market has performed in the past. In the past, basically the second quarter or the first quarter is already behind us, right? I think what we should look at, what matter more to our investment or to our business is actually the future, right? Don't you agree that future carries more weightage in our investment result compared to the past, compared to the statistic? So I want to bring up to another slide that actually is actually extracted out from the Bank Negara Malaysia report. So basically, this chart tell you about the global economy, how they have performed from the first quarter and the second quarter. All right. As you know, the first country that actually went through lockdown period is actually China. All right. So the China, the first quarter, what they have done is very bad. All right. You look at the quantum of the China economy size, negative, close to negative 10%. I think it's slightly below 10%. I think it's negative 8% at the time. It's considered a very, very big loss to the economy in China. But at the same time, the second quarter, because they are the first country to lock down, they are almost one of the first country to lift the lockdown and resume the economy. So as you can see, China is one of the countries that in the second quarter has registered a positive GDP result, amounted to 3.2%. Okay, you can see a 3.2%. So what we are seeing, if you can take a leaf, we can learn something from what China, which is the first country went to lockdown and went to resumption of economic activities. You can see that China is actually come from the bottom and all the way up. So with no surprise, most of the countries listed here should follow the same trend by variance, but the main trend should be similar. Okay, as we can see from China, and we can see the May and June production for as I illustrated just now. So we are looking at future. We have quite positive about it. So the other things I want to highlight to you is that if you look at the economic data, all right, that comes out to different quarters, I want to share you something that I can see here. What the image that you can see from the screen, what I want to illustrate through this image, basically I want to let you know that I think all of us have done this before. In order for us to jump higher, we must squat lower. You must squat down our body to create the momentum for us to jump higher. That's very important. Same thing. If we look at the second quarter of Malaysian GDP, which is worse than the expectation, negative 17%, it actually provides a lower base. It actually provide a lower base so that when we actually come up with the third quarter, 3Q GDP result, we should, by in a way, having a much better performance because we are seeing economic activity is resuming. At the same time, if compare Q to Q, quarter to quarter two is lower. All right. Just for example, if you have went to the study, all right, school, if your first half year result is only 40 points, 40 marks. All right. If you have scored 80 marks in the second half of the year in your school, so 40 marks to 80 marks basically is 100% improvement, isn't it? Same thing when you look at the GDP result. If we can continue, notwithstanding with any other uncertainties in terms of the new COVID-19 cases, the Q3 GDP should give the market a booster in terms of the confidence because second GDP in Malaysia is having a lower base. Okay. Now, just now we did mention about not just GDP, we also talk about inflation. Now, why inflation is very important in particular to property market as well, because we all agree that interest rate plays a big part in influencing the property market. So in one of the way, Hong Leong Investment Bank and including RAM, one of the rating agency, has indicated that Bank Negara may cut our overnight policy by another 25 basis point. Now, our OPR is at 1.75%, which is already the lowest in Malaysian history. But we expect next month, as early as next month, our Bank Negara will cut another 25 basis point to 1.5%. Now, whether or not to cut OPR, basically Bank Negara has many considerations. One of the consideration is they want to look at how the economic inflation, the country inflation rate is. If the inflation rate is very high, Bank Negara hands is very tight because in order to control the inflation, Bank Negara normally have to increase the interest rate. But remember the things I mentioned to you just now, on the second quarter of Malaysian economy, we basically suffer deflation. So when we suffer deflation, it gives more room, it gives more possibility for the Bank Negara to cut the OPR. Okay? Then the second thing is when Bank Negara or any central bank in the world cut their interest rate in the country, normally, although not absolutely, but normally they would have an impact devaluing their currency. So with the country, central bank reduce their interest rate, normally their currency will come down. And the currency comes down doesn't mean it's a bad thing to a country, because when the currency comes down, it will actually help to boost the export part. All right. So two reasons: if you give more chances, more room, more possibility for the Bank Negara to cut the interest rate, is because first of all, instead of having a inflation, we are having a deflation. And second thing also, at the moment, we try to boost our export overseas as well. All right. Now, after the result come out, and this one actually is updated today. This is by CNA. You can see here commentary: with COVID-19 under control, the worst is over for the Malaysian economy. Okay. Oh bless, I hope this is true. Okay, now standing with the new COVID-19 case, if it's everything under control, the 17.5 is already at our real meter. All right, it's past us. Okay, now I just want to stop sharing this slide and see if anybody have any questions that you want to pose. Okay. Okay, if you have any question, you feel free to post in our website. We will actually pick up the comment so that we can answer the comment in the chat room as well. Okay. So with this, thank you for tuning in for the session. I hope you guys can pick up some of the information regarding the GDP, inflation, at least to give us like a guideline, what happened in the past and where shall we head in the future. Okay. All right. Post your comments here if you need to, if anything in mind, we'll pick up the question and then we'll answer accordingly. With this, thank you very much and have a good long weekend ahead. Bye-bye.